and welcome to our oh-so-scary Halloween special here at Kapow. I'm Deathface Ginny.
And I'm... Actually, you know what? If I need to explain what I'm going for here, then you may be watching the wrong show.
Yeah.
We're here at Kings Comics, where things often go bump in the night, but when they do, it's usually us, because that's when they let us into film.
Yes, and we've got more horror going on here than you can shake a fun-sized Snickers at. We have reviews of Echoes from Image, Issue 1 of Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and Volume 1 of Ferals.
We'll also be talking with Tristan about Halloween food ideas, as well as getting some tips from our old friend Ardella on Halloween costumes and the best way to make fake blood.
Handy for dress-ups and also for faking your own death.
Yeah, and I keep telling you, you weren't fooling anyone.
Dude, you were burying me and you wouldn't quit it till I hit you with a shovel.
Yeah, you know what? I was just following your zombie survival guide.
Actually that is true. Rule number 7, never give a zombie the benefit of the doubt.
And finally, of course, Ray will be here to review the anime When They Cry.
So grab your goodie bag, stick in a pair of fake fangs, and let's get cracking.
More than just a time for carving pumpkins, eating tons of candy, and watching awesome things on YouTube, Halloween is a time for delving into the supernatural.
So in that spirit...
No pun intended.
No pun intended. So in that vein...
How vain? Like with vampires?
No! There will be no punning. God. So for this segment, we thought we'd take a look at two of the classic supernatural creatures, witches and werewolves.
Yeah, we thought about doing something with zombies, but we figured that's kind of been done to death.
Was that...
Yeah, I totally meant that one on purpose.
Yeah, so moving right along. First off, we have an old favourite with a macabre twist. Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Issue 1.
If you grew up in the 90s, then you may already be familiar with a teenage witch named Sabrina Spellman, with her quirky aunties, her wisecracking cat, and with the thousands of wacky mishaps that happen whenever a teenager can do magic.
Yeah, but this comic is neither wacky, quirky, it's not even madcap. Roberto Aguirre Sacasa's take on Sabrina is drenched in the darker side of the occult. In this reality, witches are card-carrying Satanist cannibals who wish only the worst for mankind.
And presumably making time for all of that stuff, whilst also getting a boyfriend and trying to pass her exams, will be the series' main struggle for Sabrina, along with avoiding a succubus that's come to Earth to destroy what's left of her family, of course.
Of course. Look, I've got to say that Robert Hack's artwork really is the star here. His sepia-toned visuals manage to not only invoke the 1960s era that this comic is set in, but also to create an ominous and effortlessly creepy flavour to the narrative.
I did feel that there were a few problems with story structure. The time frame jumps about and some elements are left largely unexplained, although that will likely be cleared up in issues to come. All in all though, it is an enjoyable riff on the character and I'm going to give it a buy.
Yeah, I really liked it too. Despite the grim tone, there are still elements of humour to balance it out, largely thanks to Salem the cat. And having a cameo from Betty and Veronica as the two witches who summon the succubus was inspired. I'm giving it a buy as well.
Now let's move on from the creepy and ominous to the downright gut-churning. Volume 1 of Ferals, written by David Lapham with art by Gabriel Andrade.
Gut-churning is right, pretty much in the literal sense. Within 5 pages of beginning this story, you will see a man who has been completely torn to shreds, again, not being figurative, with his dangly parts shoved into his mouth. The gore is certainly front and centre of this book.
Yeah, I think the only time it's not gory is when it's borderline pornographic. There's an almost gleeful sense of diving into the baser areas of human nature in Ferals. You get the same feeling as you do when watching a really graphic creature feature.
Story-wise, Ferals follows the tribulations of Officer Dale Chestnut, a lawman in a small town who starts to find everyone close to him getting eviscerated by a massive werewolf. But this monster clearly has a purpose, and worse, a human mind.
There's certainly plenty to like in this book, but I did find myself getting a little worn down by the relentless gore.
There's nothing left to the imagination, is there? But I kind of think that's the point. I mean, this is a story that glories in the viscera, and there's going to be a lot of people who love that about it.
True enough, but the other thing that bothered me about this was the representation of women. I know the genre standard argument probably still applies, but it's pretty gratuitously misogynistic.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. The women in this book are, without exception, either harpies, whimpering victims, or sex objects. And I would be lying if I said that it didn't stick in my craw a little too, but it is part of the genre.
Yeah, I know, and I guess it's not like there's any real heroes in this story anyway. No. Even Dale is pretty unlikable. It's not really my cup of tea, but I know a lot of people will enjoy it, so I'm going to go for a borrow.
Yeah, it is a good representation of the genre. It's certainly not reinventing the wheel on werewolves, but there is a lot of good fun to be had reading this. I'm going to go for a borrow as well.
Okay, and here we are with our old friend Ardella. Thank you so much for coming along.
Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Now, happy Halloween, of course.
And happy Halloween to you.
That time of year again. Now,
yes.
As a professional cosplayer, must be an interesting time of year for you.
It is. It's one of my favourite times of the year because it's the one time where if you're not dressed up, you're going to be the odd one out.
Absolutely. Now, it's a bit of a stressful time of year for some people. They don't know what they're going to do. A lot of people just end up just grabbing something from the store. I mean, is that a good way to go, do you think?
Yeah, no, look, you don't have to be a seasoned cosplayer to be able to pull together a really effective outfit. And you can start by just going and getting something from the store. If you do decide to go that route, though, I do suggest that you add a little personal touch and flair to it. So maybe go and take it out and rub it in the dirt, add a little bit of grit and grime and a little bit worn-in feeling to it.
Nice. So giving a bit of your own personal touch.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
exactly.
And one of the ways to do that, I understand, is with a bit of the old
fake blood. Yeah. All of that sort of thing. So the blood that I've got here is going to be made from some really simple ingredients that you can get at your local grocery store. We've got some glucose syrup. It's the same as corn syrup for you Americans. We've also got some red food colouring. You can use gel or liquid. And chocolate syrup. You can use any kind of chocolate syrup that you like.
If you're feeling fancy, you can print for the big stuff. Yeah?
Exactly, just not ice magic.
Okay, because it's pretty solid. That's for if you've got a really old
exactly
dead person,
some really nice clotted blood
some just
with the ice
hardened
magic
on there. Getting a bit gross. So let's get away from the gross and make some blood.
Excellent, let's do that.
Okay, how do we start?
Well, first of all, we want to get our glucose syrup. That adds our nice little clear base there to it. It's also a little bit thick, so we want to get a spoonful of the glucose syrup there and just dribble that in there. It's going to take a little bit of time to come off the spoon, but
Sure.
we'll do it eventually, I promise. I'll grab the red food colouring.
Looking appetizing already.
It is. Don't eat that, though. It doesn't taste like anything.
No. Be a bit of a waste of time.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so with the red food colouring, it will stain your fingers, so
Right.
don't get red on you.
Okay.
There we are. So we want just a couple of drops in there, and you can stir that up for me if you like.
Okey-doke, let's get
You
that
get to
all
be
moving.
my pretty assistant for this one.
Fantastic. Okay,
There
so
we
that's
are.
looking
So
good now.
Now that you've got it all
Clotted up
nice
nicely.
and red, yes, we will add some chocolate syrup, and that'll darken it up a little bit and give it a little bit more of a bloody colour to it. 'Cause
Lovely.
blood isn't really just red; it's more dark and kind of bluey even.
True,
so the
true.
chocolate
Especially
syrup,
if you get it down out of the
yeah,
artery.
down out of the artery. So we add a fair bit of chocolate syrup there.
There we go. All right.
Stir it all together and see how we're doing.
Put it all mixed up. All right, it's getting
That's
very delightful there.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So it's up to you if you want to add a little more chocolate syrup to it or if you want to just leave it like this. If you want to make it a little bit more bloody and clotted, you can even add some flour to it, and that'll add a little bit of clot to it. It won't taste quite as good anymore though.
Which is a bit of a loss.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, fantastic. Well, look, that's coming together really nicely. That's nice and viscous now, so you can really freak some people out with that just by
really
drinking
is.
that in front of them.
Yeah, and it's got such a good
Look at that.
look. If you pour that down your arm, it's going to look like blood, and it's going to flow like blood as well, which is great.
Fantastic. So look, there's a lovely little tip, very easy thing you can throw together for Halloween, so that's fantastic.
Definitely.
Now look, Halloween, you've shown us a great thing to use, but what's your favourite aspect of Halloween, do you
My
think?
favourite aspect of Halloween, I think, is that even if you want to go as a sexy fairy or a really scary zombie, whichever way you decide to go, you're going to fit in.
Fantastic, and that's what we all really want.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for coming in again. It's been
Thank
great
you
to
so
have
much
you.
for having me.
I think it's fair to say that the horror genre is difficult to pull off in comic medium. Unlike films, you don't have a soundtrack to set the scene, and it's much harder to do those shock scares because, well, you're choosing your own pace.
Yeah, it's true, but one method that really does work in comics for bringing home the scary is an unreliable narrator. And it's a method that is used to great effect in Joshua Hale Fialkov's disturbing 5-part chiller, Echoes.
From the first pages, it's clear that our protagonist, Brian Cohen, has a slightly disjointed view on the world, often experiencing things in a chaotic jumble due to his acute schizophrenia. The condition also affected his father, Martin, before he succumbed to an Alzheimer's-induced coma, and it's at Martin's deathbed that we begin our story.
And what would a deathbed be without a last-minute confession? Just before Martin breathes his last, he confides in his son that there is a box hidden underneath a house, and that in that box rests the remains of a lot of dead little girls.
Yeah, now this would be hard for anyone to process, but for Brian, who fears he is exactly like his father, it's just enough to push him over the edge.
And this is where Rasan Ekadal's superb artwork rises up to meet Fialkov's dark storytelling.
Yeah, one of the creepiest elements in this tale is the contrast of horrific images over suburban mundanity. Ekadal's depictions of Brian's hallucinations are disturbing enough, but somehow it's the real stuff that really made me squirm.
You're talking about the dolls.
I am absolutely talking about the dolls. The little bone puppets made out of skin, hair, and bone of murdered children will haunt your nightmares exactly the way they do mine. Genuinely chilling stuff.
I know what you mean, they were pretty grotesque, but for me it was the human element, you know, the tragedy of Brian's descent into psychosis that really kind of still makes me shudder.
Yeah, well, the horror tale does use mental illness as a plot device, but they treat it with the utmost respect. The tension that's created by the alarm on Brian's watch, reminding him to take his medication, along with his ultimately futile efforts to stay calm and in control, create empathy for him, but it also instills this feeling of breathless panic in the reader.
I was quite impressed by this book. It's grim, it's disturbing, and it's made even more so by its place in the real world.
Yeah.
This is definitely a buy from me.
Yeah, if you're looking for a scary story that's going to leave you unsettled, and not to mention casting suspicious glances at your neighbours, then this is the one for you. It's a big buy from me. Okay, Kapowians, I have Tristan with me today from Geek Plate. Thanks for joining us today on Kapow.
Thank you for having me, Sonya.
Happy Halloween. It's very exciting happening here.
Good time for food, Halloween.
Oh yes, so Geek Plate. What's Geek Plate?
Geek Plate is, I guess, the quick way of saying it is cosplay for food.
Brilliant. I think that's brilliant.
It's basically, my attempt to recreate food and drink and anything edible, but anything consumable that appears in popular culture, so movies, books, TV shows, comics.
Cool, because it does make the world. Like, food makes the world in a lot of these kind of fantasy elements.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the really grounding elements. When something has food in it, you really remember it, because no matter how out there a fantasy world is, the need to eat kind of grounds everything. I mean, when you think of the lambus bread in the Lord of the Rings stories.
I've always wanted to eat some.
Yeah, that's the reaction everyone has, even
Yeah.
though they describe it as being really dry.
You still want some.
That's exactly right, yeah.
So what was the inspiration behind creating Geek Plate?
Well, I'm a food writer and photographer in my professional life, and a big geek outside of that. So it was a really an opportunity. When I had the idea, I was excited because it was an opportunity to combine those things, I guess, and to I guess have a focus when I'm watching something. You know, a lot of people like to participate, and again, that's where the cosplay for food comes from, because a cosplayer tends to watch things and have ideas about how they can sort of participate in that world. I liked having an idea that meant I could do the same thing without having to dress up.
Awesome. What was the first thing you food cosplayed?
It was a Krusty Burger.
Excellent. Of course. Everyone knows Krusty Burger.
That was my philosophy. I tried to recreate all the packaging and you know, the chips box and the drink box and the tray, and then sort of reset it back into the Simpsons environment with the animated background. Even if you don't watch the show anymore, everyone knows what a Krusty Burger is.
Everyone knows it's there. So you've brought a couple of things along today, which I get to eat. So I'm so excited about this. What have we got? Talk me through it, Tristan.
Things that I have made from Game of Thrones. I've made Sansa's lemon cakes, which is something that she gets, I think, partially bribed with from time to time.
Quite fond of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of food in the Game of Thrones universe. A lot of things happen. There's a lot of wine as well. A lot of things happen around meal times. There's lots of preparation of food, skinning of animals and things. It's a really visceral part of that world. But lemon cakes sort of seemed a little bit nicer than having an entire boar be
I guess it's probably
skinned on the table.
easier to carry as well.
Absolutely. Well, I caught the bus here, so it was going to be difficult.
Awesome. So while you tell Kapowians what a lemon cake, Sansa's lemon cake is, I'm going to try one because they look amazing. So how have you made these?
Well, I tried to get a recipe that was a lemon cake recipe that was closer to the sort of medieval recipes. So it sort of fit into that fantasy world instead of being some light, airy angel food cake or something like that definitely wouldn't have existed at King's Landing. And then really, because most of the food is actually constructed for photography, I have to put a lot of thought into how it's going to look. So with these, I've soaked them in a lemon syrup as well, so that they hopefully taste all right.
They taste amazing.
But so that they also kind of look nice and moist even when they're photographed in the studio.
I would totally get bribed by these. These are amazing. Okay, I'm going to put that one back there for later. What's next?
Next, well, from the Harry Potter universe, of which I am personally an enormous fan, we have butterbeer, which people will remember from Hogsmeade, predominantly, the 3 broomsticks. And this is, I think in Harry Potter it's described as being mildly alcoholic, but only enough to get a gnome or a house elf. Slightly tipsy, yeah. So I think it'll be fine for us.
I'm gonna. This is weird.
Yep.
I think I'm gonna drink off my skull face, unfortunately. That's delicious. Okay, so last but not least.
Right. Well,
I know what's in there.
chances are that you'll know what this is just from looking at the container that it's in. But from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, these are the monkey brains.
Its head comes off. Oh, that's quite horrific.
So I guess the important thing here was making it look horrible. So, hey, I've got a spoon for you.
Oh, great. Look at that.
And I invite you to go deep because I think the important thing is when you're eating monkey brains, you want to get every layer of the monkey brain.
If I don't survive this, Kapowians, it's his fault. You know this.
It is.
It's quite gross. Okay. But it's quite delicious.
That's what I tell you.
So obviously, it's not monkey brains. What is it made from?
That's a vanilla custard with marshmallow whipped cream. Which is creating the lumps on top there, and then some pureed plums and cherries to make the red sauce.
That's really delicious. I think that's possibly my favourite thing here. So, with Halloween coming up, we have themed parties. So, say if they're doing like a Game of Thrones theme party or a Harry Potter theme, what's kind of your rules for the food?
Oh, there's definitely no rules. But I think that it's a really good idea to stay on theme as much as possible because decorating things obviously goes a long way and dressing up goes a long way, but food's something that everyone hopes to have at a party, and it's a really good opportunity to get into the theme. So the first thing that I would do is scour either the source material if you're a big fan, or the internet if you need some tips on food that exists in that universe already. So with Game of Thrones, you would definitely try and get some sort of meat to carve on the table, I guess, or you would get lemon cake. So there's an abundance of food that you can find from that universe. Failing actual ideas, I would just also caution with recipes online that there's often it's a good idea to test the recipes first because they can be a little bit uneven, and you don't want the worst thing in the world is to be 20 minutes away from people arriving at the door and you've got face makeup on and your custard monkey brains aren't setting.
No, that would be disaster.
And failing actual food that comes from the world, it's always a good idea to go for puns. So for Game of Thrones, I might make a nice big King's Flanding.
Punny. That's excellent. So if Kapowians, who I'm sure will be really interested to see some more of your fantastic creations, where can they find Geekplate?
So geekplate.com is the website, and there's a Twitter, at Geekplate, which is also the Instagram and the Facebook.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for bringing these along. I'm just going to finish this cake off just because it's rude not to.
I might have a Twinkie since I didn't have to make those.
Twinkies and Reese's Pieces. It's brilliant. Thank you so much for coming along, Tristan.
Thanks for having me, Sonya.
When we were thinking of titles to review for our Halloween special, we ran into a bit of a problem. And that problem was all the titles we could think of we'd already reviewed.
Yeah, over the last 70 odd episodes, we've come across some great scary stories, but then we realised this could be a blessing in disguise and a great opportunity for us to take another look at some of our favourites.
That's right. So we proudly present to you... Ba-ba-da-da! What?
You think that's the right tone? Shouldn't it be more sort of...
Ba-ba-da-da! Kapow's Top 10 Scary Comics.
Coming in at number 10, we have Night Mary by Rick Remender and Kieran Dwyer. This comic uses the concept of jumping into other people's dreams to provide a broad range of visual styles as well as some very scary moments.
Number 9 on the list reminds us that horror can also be hilarious. I Feel Sick by Jonan Vasquez. This is the story of an artist called Devi who is struggling to defeat the evil doll that lives inside her paintings. It has all of Vasquez's disturbingly hilarious artwork and is so much fun to read.
At number 8, we have Absalom, Ghosts of London. This is the story of an old-school London cop who enforces a centuries-old agreement between the English throne and the denizens of hell. Written by Gordon Rennie with artwork by Tiernan Trevelyan, this is a story for anyone who would like to see a demon get kicked in the testicles.
Number 7 is a humanoids title called Whispers in the Walls. It's written by David Munoz with amazing artwork by Tirso. You will find pretty much every supernatural creature you can in this book, and the scariest one of them all, a little girl in a red coat.
Coming in at number 6 is Harvest, showing that sometimes the scariest monster is mankind. A.J. Lieberman's organ-harvesting tragedy is a disturbing ride, made more intense by blood-drenched artwork by Colin Lorimer.
Coming in at our halfway point is the first of 2 titles by writer Scott Snyder. Severed, written along with Scott Tuft with art by Ardella Futaki. This is the story of a young boy's trip across America to find his father, which is cut short by one of the scariest characters in comic books I have ever come across. A man with very sharp teeth and a taste for flesh.
Yeah, now creepy comic number 4 comes to us from the powerhouse team of Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Fatale is the title that made us wonder why there weren't more crime noir / demon / Nazi mashups. A brilliant read for fans of a whole handful of genres.
Yeah. Nearing the end now, and we come to the second title by Scott Snyder with art by Raphael Albuquerque, and it is one of my personal favourites. American Vampire. Snyder's retelling of the history of America by way of a new vampire species, Homo abominus americanus. If you're not already reading this series, well, you should just be ashamed of yourself. This is a modern classic.
Yes, now number 2 is a series that I know has caused a few sleepless nights. Written by Joe Hill with art by Gabriel Rodriguez, this comic is the reason I can't use wishing wells anymore. When a tragedy drives the Locke family back to their ancestral home in New England, they have no idea the horrors awaiting them. And neither will you.
And our number 1 creepiest comic comes to us from humanoids. I mean, was there ever any doubt? Pandemonium, written by Christoph Beck with art by Stefano Raffaele. A prolonged stay in a sanatorium to cure her daughter of tuberculosis leads a woman into one of the most depraved and horrific situations possible. I still have nightmares about this, and I read it about 2 years ago.
I know. So there you have it, guys, our top 10 creepy comics, and you can see full reviews of each of those on our channel.
Yes, but don't read them all at once, or you will be sleeping with the lights on for the rest of your life. Hey, Ray.
Hey Sonya, hey guys.
So, have you ever been scared by an anime?
When I was a kid, yeah, there was quite a few that shocked me. These days I can distance myself somewhat, luckily.
Fair enough. So, what have you brought along for us to look at today?
Well, I'm not going to try and pronounce the original titles of this, but it's called Higurashi When They Cry in the West. And a Higurashi is essentially a kind of cicada, in case you're wondering. Set in 1983, the series is based on a mystery game by Seventh Expansion and takes place in a fictional rural village called Hinamizawa. The main character, Kiechi, moves to the town and befriends 4 female classmates. The The town appears to be a normal, peaceful, rural village. However, during a celebration every year, some townsfolk are brutally murdered and others abducted. Keiichi is drawn ever deeper into this mystery and at times forfeits his life for reason.
Now, we don't want to give too much away, but
No.
the story essentially loops and it slowly reveals more and more as the series progresses.
Yeah, it requires the audience to be quite active.
Yeah.
And it's very much a murder mystery.
Yeah, but on the surface, it's kind of like a harem rom-com.
Yeah.
So why did you choose this one?
Well, that's kind of exactly why I chose it, because on the surface it's very different to what's going on underneath. Essentially, it's a bishoujo anime where many episodes cover the trivialities of regular life in the town and reflect Keiichi's changing relationships with his friends. There's an underlying sexual tension present as well, though it's not overt, which is nice. But this all serves to disarm the viewer. As the story progresses, we discover that each of his friends harbour secrets and sometimes become possessed. When they do, it's downright creepy.
Yeah, possessed children are the creepiest.
Yes.
Now, when you were looking for a series, I would have thought you would have gone with something like Hellsing or Vampire Hunter D.
Yeah, look, they're definitely titles, to have a look at,
Yeah.
but I just didn't think that they were scary. They're graphic and gory, but they don't really tick that other box. I could have chosen a whole host of titles, really, across the anime kingdom, but as you know, and many of our fans out there would know, that the format really has no boundaries. Animes such as Blood, The Last Vampire, or the psychological terror of Lane, Serial Experiments, or even the stalker film Perfect Blue are all contenders. Higurashi strikes a balance between these elements once it gets going. It's quite immersive, and some of the editing and direction is truly surprising. You may think a scene is over only to find some arms reaching into the frame, and before you gasp, it pulls out and it's suddenly a friend, or there's someone appearing in the slither of a light in a doorway and then they disappear again. And these things might not seem extraordinary, but they happen at just the wildest unexpected times. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's all the, graphic violence.
Yes, this is definitely an anime for mature audiences. I won't describe what you will see, but it gets increasingly shocking and confrontational as it goes on. The animation isn't the sharpest, but this goes to show that a decent story can make an anime shine beyond those constraints. In Higurashi, psychological paranoia is what drives this story. The director, Chaki Kon, orchestrates this beautifully. It's nail-biting to see what the characters will do to save themselves. As soon as a character lies, which they often do, it's sometimes painful to watch them cover their tracks, even when they've been discovered. So, what did you think?
It's quite haunting, and I didn't expect it to venture into the territory that it does.
No.
When the characters switch or become possessed, it's really disturbing. And there's a couple of scenes in particular that made me really squish my face, so that's always good in a horror. I thought the dialogue got a little bit repetitive in some places, especially with all the various loops that are happening. I think a lot of the elements could have been just stronger. It didn't need to be spoon-fed to the audience. But I still really enjoyed it, so it's a borrow.
Yep, alright. Well, yeah, at first I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to sympathise with these characters and what they were going through at all, because Bishoujo is not something I'm sort of naturally drawn to.
Sure.
That said, I found myself wishing for some answers for their, these circumstances, these living nightmares they're caught in, and perhaps free themselves of the twists of fate, But I'm going to give it a borrow as well, because it's not the sort of thing you'd watch in a second viewing. I think it would reveal a lot of the pacing issues, and second season isn't as strong, and I just don't think it's everyone's cup of tea. And by tea, I mean blood.
Of course. So have you got any other recommendations for this?
Other than ones we've already mentioned, you could look at Mermaid Forest, Elfin Lied, Corpse Party, but if you just want something bloody and gory, it's not so much scary, take a look at Gantz, Gantz. It's excellent.
Awesome. So just one more thing, Ray.
Yeah.
Who is this character that you've got going on here?
You're kidding, it's Wilson from Castaway.
Why?
Are you kidding me? That silently judging bloody volleyball is the stuff of nightmares, Sonya. It's the stuff of nightmares.
But you do realise he's possessed your face, right?
No, he's... what?
And with that, we come to the end of our Halloween special.
Yes, hopefully you found it to be more treat than trick.
Indeed, so keep your eye on the Facebook page for upcoming episodes.
As well as any random malarkey we might find on the interwebs that we think might make you smile.
Indeed, and look, while you're at it, why don't you drop us a line and let us know which comic books make you start awake in the middle of the night convinced something is moving under the bed.
Okay, thanks for that. I'm never going to sleep again. So until next time, guys.
Bye.